excited to be here with you, and I'm so grateful for your time and for your presence today. My name is Joan Okitoi-Heisig, like Jennifer said. I am based in Geneva, and I'm really excited to be doing this together with Jennifer and to be on this journey with all of you. And just to get us started, I'd like each one of you to introduce yourselves by just telling us who you are, where you are in the world, and what brings you here today. So feel free, just go ahead and introduce yourselves, just one person at a time.
We'll ask for a little bit of bravery.
I can go.
Thanks, Tanya.
My name is Tanya Catherine. I'm in Toronto. The executive director of Spirit in Action International. And this week I'm starting to work on our year-end fundraising letter. So I thought it was perfectly timed to think about that.
Welcome, Tanya. Great to have you.
Tanya, would you mind picking someone? We'll do a little less popcorn and a little more pass the baton. How about that?
Okay. How about Nina?
Hi, everyone. I'm Nina Ford. I'm here in Washington, D.C. I do communications at Global Fund for Children, and I had the privilege of joining the Changing the Narrative series that you did, Jennifer, with a lot of really inspiring speakers in December and January. And so hoping to continue having conversations like that here.
Great to have you, Nina.
Yeah. And I guess pick someone else.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Maybe Deepa.
Hi everyone. This is Deepa. I'm joining you all from Bangalore, India. What brings me here today? Just curiosity. I've always wanted this to happen. Just, people getting together and being real about comms and, the joy that it brings, the stress that it brings, the questions that it begins to raise, both in a good way and in a not so good way. So it's really excited that this has kicked off. And yeah, looking forward to today's inaugural session. I gotta pick someone. How about Cynthia?
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. My name is Cynthia Kisaro. I live in Cologne, Germany. I'm from Kenya. And I got to know about this space through Joan. And just here, curious, just like you, Deeper. And I hope I can get to learn and also share exactly what, through my experiences and all. Great to have you all here and looking forward to this meeting. Thank you. What about, I'll pass on to, let's see, Marianne.
I'll put my camera on briefly. I'm sending messages to people that couldn't get in and things, so I'll just be brief. I'm Marianne Clements. I am the person that kind of originally initiated Healing Solidarity. I'm in London in the UK. What brings me here is sort of supporting this getting off the ground, excited to see it happening. Obviously, we're communicating with people all the time as well in the project, so just sort of interested in being a part of the conversation. Sorry, it's noisy here, so I'm going to turn my sound off shortly. But yeah, so just excited to see this start and to hear from all of you. Yeah.
And who will you pick, Marianne? Could we ask Natalie to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie. I'm the communications associate for an organization called Together for Girls. And I'm based in DC, but taking this call from New Jersey today. And what brought me here is just our org works to end sexual violence against children. So I'm curious to learn more about comms, especially around more sensitive topics and just really authentic storytelling. And I will call on Kid Kelly.
Hi, I'll show my face briefly. Hi, I'm Kikeli. I am in Brussels and I work on human rights with a focus on migration. I am not a comms person per se, but I've worked on comms, on social change communication, and our comm person has left recently, so kind of picking up a little bit some of that work. And I'm here because I guess, as I said, I'm not a comms person, and I'm trying to understand how comms work, because so much of the time I feel like I am not the recipient of it, or that I feel like he misses the mark, that there's a lot of marketing techniques in it, but not enough heart. So, and knowing the work that the collective does and all the rest of it, I'm here to listen and learn.
Glad you're here.
Thanks.
Oh, and I'll pass it to Maame.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maame. I'm based in Ghana, so I'm talking from there today. And I'm here because I'm always curious and I'm excited to speak to folks who are, doing this work. And this seems like such a beautiful space to be a part of, so I'm glad I'm here. Let's see, who hasn't gone? And I can pass it to Monica.
Great, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Apologies for this backlighting. This is why I did not have my camera on, but good to put a face to a name usually. As I said, my name is Monica. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a global gender advocate working for a women's rights and gender equality organization. I have a background in comms, and so I'm always seeking to strengthen that backbone, because I think it's so fundamental to how we do our work in our sector, and really hoping to hear from everybody and share and learn and absorb to also strengthen my work as an advocate. So thank you, Jennifer, for holding this space today.
Welcome, Monica. Who would you like to pick next? We have a few.
Great question. Putul, I think you haven't introduced. I'm trying to remember who hasn't gone yet, but yeah,
That's
Putul,
right, yeah.
if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Hi everyone, my name is Putul and I come from New Delhi, India. And I work as a fundraiser professional with an NGO working on systemic transformations in government schools of India, which are quite under-resourced. And I have been a communications professional before this. And communications actually led me to fundraising, exploring the ways I can use communications as a tool to raise funds. So, and I'm looking forward to hearing some very real thoughts minus the jargons, and learning about challenges and how everyone looks at them, and hoping to learn so much from all of you today.
Yeah, welcome, Patul. Who would you like to choose? We have Jess and
who is left? Jess, would you want to go?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Thank you. My name is Jess Lishak. I'm head of communications for the We Protect Global Alliance, which is a membership organisation of government, civil society organisations and tech industry, tackling online child sexual abuse and exploitation. I've been in this role for just coming up to 4 months now, so I'm still quite new, and I'm new to the international space as well. I've done a lot of work in communications around child sexual abuse in my previous role, so I'm really interested in finding out the different challenges and dynamics that I'm going to face in the international and development space. And I was suggested this by one of our contacts at Ignite Philanthropy, Katie.
Beautiful.
I'm not sure who hasn't been yet.
That would be Senulat.
Senulat, I think you're the last person. Pass over to you.
You're muted, dear.
Yes, unmute. Okay. Hi. Hi, I'm Christine Inulat. I don't know why I put my username that way, but everybody was scared of pronouncing it, so that makes me laugh. I am brand and communications manager at Child Fund International. I'm in Richmond, Virginia. I have followed Jennifer since I started here 10 years ago, like right after you started your blog, because I knew nothing about international development at that time. And so you were an anchor for me. And now I stand sort of at the knife edge of marketing and communications about child-focused international development. And you know, you want to give your donors credit. You don't want to scare away your donors. You want to convey urgency and need, but we're addicted to urgency and need. We need a new language. And so I think conversations here will help. And I'm excited. So yay.
Yay.
Thank you.
So good to see you, Christine. Welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everybody for your introductions. And it's really nice to see that we are connecting with people from different parts of the world. Just to get us started, in terms of, our aims for this group, like you probably saw in a lot of our promotions on Twitter, we want to support you in basically thinking about, where and when you can take more creative risks, to invite change in how our organizations are communicating about our work. And the other thing we also want is, like some of you have already touched on, is to create a space where we can have those honest and those uncomfortable conversations. This is our space to make mistakes, to learn from each other, to ask each other, to sort of build on each other as well. So we want this to be a safe space for us to, raise those daily challenges that you might be facing in your work. Like some of you have mentioned, you're in the process of writing proposals or, taking over some communication roles, and you're thirsty for sort of this, maybe not critical, but, like a different way, like challenging the status quo in the way that you're doing your communications. So yeah, welcoming those and easy conversations, learning from each other, making mistakes, and charting the way forward, being the way forward, really. And we want, above all, to just have this as our space, a community where we feel less alone, because this can be a lonely path to, to follow by yourself. And you might have people around you who are also interested in doing the same thing, but just because, we're not opening up about these sort of challenges that we're taking on, we want this space to be that place where you can come and just be open and just spill, and let's figure this out together. And the reason why we're doing this, Jennifer is also going to go a little bit deeper on this, why we decided to do this. It's also because it's sort of like a sign of our times right now, and the sign has been screaming at us for a very long time. But the Black Lives Movement, this year has basically been, a very big sort of awakening period for us in so many different sectors, in the public and in the private sector. And, we believe that reimagining communications in international development is necessary, and it is possible. And it's necessary because, right now you might be seeing this sort of, there's a lot of initiatives, going the direction of decolonizing education, decolonizing digital development, decolonizing global development. Well, we're not just writing on that, which is for us, we want this to be a sustained movement. And this is why we've chosen to go the monthly way, so that, it's not just a one-off thing, it's not just a webinar, but it's a conversation that continues. And our plan is to do this, for up to 6 months, as we see, as we also get input and grow together. But we also acknowledge that, global development is steeped in colonialism, and, this anchoring in colonialism basically seeps into the way that we do communications. And, this space that we're creating is here to basically, challenge that status quo, and the status quo might be in some way benefiting us, which might sort of sometimes also come in the way of us challenging it. But this is the place to sort of figure that out. How can we do that? And for communicators, in the global north, this challenging the status quo, involves things such as, understanding the power in narrative framing, in the sense that you look at the words that you're using, the images that you're choosing, to accompany the communication work that you're doing, the stories that you're choosing, who you're involving in the stories, and how sort of these choices might be perpetuating certain stereotypes. And, this is the space that we want to talk about those issues, also to just give you another set of eyes when you're doing that work. And for communicators in the global south, it's about recognizing and learning, how we might have internalized, that white gaze in development, because, ultimately what we're working towards is to shift the power also to the global south, to acknowledge the sense of agency as well. Yeah. And at this point, I will ask Jennifer to step in to just sort of give us an input on what this group might do together over the next 6 months.
Yeah. Thanks, Joanne. I just want to give a little bit of shout out and credit to the webinar series that contributed to this. That was sponsored by the Global Fund for Community Foundations. And I'll just put that in the chat for anyone who wants to review that series. There's some really great stuff to look at there. We want this to be an emergent space. So we might find that there's things we want to do together. We might find that there needs to sort of be some new standards or some new guidelines that we can help co-create. Or we might just need to bellyache and solve problems together. Or, this is a time we're just gonna do this for a few months and see what arrives. So we'll just really invite you to take part in the small groups that'll happen after our guests give their presentation, and to think together what we might want to do. We don't have an agenda other than what Joanne just described. We want to be here and create this space so we can grapple together with the difficulties of this, with the questions that emerge as we try to do this differently. So we're just so grateful to the Healing Solidarity Collective to be willing to host this and to have this conversation be an ongoing one. And there's many, and we'll talk about at the end, there's many ways to support the collective and Joanne and us as facilitators and honor of our time and effort, but we're just really grateful and glad to have you all here. The other thing that I want to say is just to set a few expectations for how we spend this time together. We're already a half hour in. We knew it would go fast, but it was important in this first session, we felt, to really set the context for each other. If we are doing this in another practice that we use at Healing Solidarity is that we try to jointly facilitate spaces. So if any of you at any time require some one-on-one support, we are a trauma-informed space. We can quickly make a breakout room and hold space for someone if someone needs it. I just want to put that on offer. That's why we do joint facilitation. And there's just a couple principles that will guide us in this time together. We want to create a space of learning, not critique. We get critique all the time as communications professionals. We are used to receiving a lot of opinions about the work we're putting out there. Let's let this space be much more supportive, frankly, and inquisitive together. I think that's one thing we want to bring to this. The other thing is to really, and we talked about, Joanne spoke to this a bit, this is a safe space, but more so we want it to be a brave space. And to us, that means not really knowing what you're going to say before you're going to say it. As communications professionals, we're so used to the polish and needing polish. But I'm just going to invite you to dare to be unprepared. It is really okay that we are not perfect in this space, and that really when we are trying to remember what we want to say, well, we're taking ourselves out of active listening. We're not here to be precise. We're welcoming you imperfectly and authentically as you are right now. And we will try to use principles of consent. So invitation and permission. For example, we asked you if we could record this space for people that are new. We are recording this session, and this will be held in the Healing Solidarity Collective with this event page after this session. If you want to not be part of that, feel free to turn off your camera. So invitation and permission also could look like, that brought this up for me. Can I share it with you? Right? It's not assuming that we are the same. That is why consent matters. Okay. So use I statements, never we, because we're not here to generalize about anybody. In fact, we're trying to really fight against that. Use your hands. The reason we did a body practice at the beginning is to remember we're in a body. We're souls in a body. So that is also a wonderful way to connect through the Zoom as humans. And then finally, we just want to acknowledge that Zoom fatigue is real. So whatever you need to do to take care of yourself is welcome. Okay, I'm going to make Deepa, or should I make Deepa or Maame a co-host? Who's going to share slide? Deepa, great. You are a co-host now. And I'm going to hand it over to Joanne to introduce our guests and hear from Deepa and Maame. Thanks.
Yeah, the exciting part, it's coming now. So Deepa is the Senior Communications and Content Coordinator of the FRIDA Fund. She's a graduate in literature and an experienced writer, sub-editor, freelancer, content director, fundraiser. And she's written extensively on human rights, gender rights, and social issues. And at the FRIDA Fund, Deepa has been looking after public communications from 2015. She's also a new mom, and she's been writing about her experiences, of becoming a new mom in the pandemic. So you're welcome to read that as well. In her free time, she loves watching sitcoms from the 90s, playing Scrabble, and reading. And our second guest is Maame. And Maame is a communications associate at the FRIDA Fund. She's a singer, a writer, a feminist activist who's based in Accra in Ghana. And she has a bachelor's degree in political science. And Maame has been working for the last 4 years in communications within feminist activist spaces. In her free time, she loves baking, burning experimental cookies, making music, reading, and just laughing out loudly with her family and friends. Yeah. We're very, very glad that you're with us. And just to get the conversation started, Maame and Deepa, on why reimagined communications practice is necessary and possible. We invite you to, to give us a short input and answer, questions, addressing why, what are the narratives rather that are needed to change in the global development space, and what are you doing at FRIDA to change these narratives? What sort of strategies are you using in your communications team? And in general, what are you up to right now? What are you grappling with? We're going to post these questions on the chat so that you're able to, to follow up. And yeah, we're handing over to Deepa and Maame.
Okay. Hi. So I'm going to start with the hope that the internet gods are with us. I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully. All right. So can everybody see something colorful in front of you? Great. I don't think I can look at the chat box, so just feel free to interrupt us, both Maame and me, when we're talking. I know time is precise, so we also don't want to, turn this into a lecture. We're learners, and it's a great thumb rule that we're here to learn and not critique. So I want to start by first giving credit to Maame, because I'm on maternity leave and she's the one who took on the challenge of, okay, we got 10 minutes to talk so much. So what do we talk about? What do we show? We don't want to bore people. It needs to be pretty. So thank you, Maame, for this beauty that you see in front of you. And I'm going to, it's not a pretty long PPT of sorts, just 4 pretty pages, but to also give you a sense and an entry into the FRIDA-verse, the FRIDA universe, which is where we come from. So just to give you a short intro on what FRIDA is. So FRIDA, the Young Feminist Fund, is a youth-led feminist funder that actively supports young feminists and young feminist activism across the global South. And yeah, both of us are young feminist activists ourselves. And, we're hoping that we use the time that we have to kind of give you an insight into some of the questions we grapple with, some of the decisions we take based on previous experiences and learnings and unlearnings, right? So yeah, let's kick off and talk about development comms and what we've learned from it. I'm going to take you to the second page. You'll see the question right in front of you there, but I'm going to read it out again, which is, what are some of the narratives that need to change that are usually associated with global development, right? I'm going to pass the mic to Maame because she had a really good point to talk about when it comes to narrative changes, and then I'll pick it up again. So Maame, over to you.
Hi everyone, thanks Deepa. So when it comes to narrative, I think the first narrative that I think everyone at FRIDA tries to tackle is this idea, or this narrative that's really popular, is this idea of like victimhood comms. So you'll see it often in the ways in which folks will talk about everyone who's doing the work as if they aren't doing the work. This idea that somehow funders and international NGOs are there to rescue groups which are most of the time already doing the work that they need to be doing. So about like these issues, it's supposed to be you, whatever the organization is, then that's impossible. And also the fact that like we aren't the ones who would necessarily doing the work. You will often find, and especially from a funder perspective, that there are organizations doing the work. The reason that funding organizations exist is because people are doing the work and they need funds to do it, not because funders have all the ideas and are going to give them to people to execute. And so communication around work that's happening should always be about, again, allowing people to occupy their agency. And it needs to shift from this place of like this all-knowing, all-being that I guess organizations are supposed to be, because that's not true. Some things just, there aren't a solution. And so I think that's the first thing. And then maybe I'll pass back to you, Deepa.
Yeah, sure. I couldn't hear just bits of what you said, Maame, but I guess that was because of the internet. But yeah, I'm hoping, that's okay. I'm hoping we're going to get a chance to like connect anyway and raise questions with each other. So that's cool. Just going to add one more point on the narrative bit and what I've been seeing, not what we've been seeing, what I've been seeing in this field. First of all, terms and terminologies have so much value, as we all know, as brilliant communicators ourselves, right? So, using terms like beneficiaries is something that I've noticed a lot. And, it kind of makes you think about who has the power, who is wielding it, how and where. And, this whole possessiveness with, our grantee partners and our grantees. Look at what our grantees are doing. Look at what our group in India is doing to raise issues on caste atrocities. So while the intention may be well in the right place, you are trying to amplify the voices, but what ends up happening is this very subtle co-opting of the movement. When you're saying our people and our folks, it's so important to remember, and especially as somebody who comes from a funder activist space, which is a very thin line, that you ultimately are an enabler, you ultimately are a catalyst, and you want to see things happening on the ground, but you aren't really on the ground. So it's such a position of power and privilege. So let's use that in a way to kind of amplify what's happening on the grassroots level without co-opting it and saying, this is what our group has been doing, and this is what our beneficiaries / grantees / grantee partners have been doing. It's a very unintentional mistake, I would say, but really speaks a lot about how we want to tackle power when we're put in these positions. I know we're conscious of time, so I'm not going to dwell more on this and move on to the next question. I'm trying to move the slide. All right. Cool. So now coming specifically to what we're doing at FRIDA, and I'm back to we. What are we doing to change these narratives? Some of the ones that we just shared, what strategies are we using? So, well, honestly, the first thing that comes to mind as a strategy is to build a communications team. That's strategy number one. More often than not, communications is the job of one person, maybe two if you're lucky. It's underfunded, it's unrecognized, it's seen as something that, you just have to tweet and post on Facebook and put some hashtags. When the reality is so far from that. I think half my life I've tried to explain what communications is beyond the social media space, right? So strategy number one, let's find the time, the space, and the resources to actually build a team. It also helps because more often than not, what happens is when there's just one person doing it, it becomes your own. So what you are thinking is what the organization is thinking. What you are tweeting is what the organization is tweeting. When you bring a second person, a third person into your team, there is more diversity. There is more, you might be thinking about something in a different way than the other person. And it's so refreshing to have somebody else take on some role. And like, just for instance, even showing what we're showing right now, I would have done it so differently than how Maame has done this, right? As simple as that. So strategy one, let's have more than one person and not burn out in the process. And not, it also helps to not feel lonely when you have 2-3 brains thinking through about how do we do a campaign, or how do we do, how do we build a comms moment. So that's strategy number one. Strategy number two, I think one of us also mentioned this whole thing about jargon. I think there is so much of assumption that people know certain terms just because they are in this field. Let's, at FRIDA, we try and be, I would say, respectful of the fact that not everybody understands something like philanthropy. Not everybody understands something like resource mobilization. Not because they don't know or they aren't aware, but just because it's a word thrown so often. It can also mean different in different contexts. We all speak different languages based on the context and the cultures that we represent and come from. So one of the things that FRIDA does in its comms is definitely try and de-jargonize as much as we can, and kind of be open to, hey, perhaps we kind of assume that people already know what capacity development means. Maybe they don't, or maybe let's try and question what this term even means. Right? Let's unpack it a little bit, because we also want to understand what capacity development means outside of this NGO development space, And one rule I always have in my mind, and I think I've shared this with Jennifer before as well, I always keep my mother at the back of my head, because she's definitely not from this field. So I'm like, how am I going to explain this idea to somebody like my mom? And that helps me and pushes me to de-jargonize, to use simpler words and texts, So that's one strategy. I'm going to pass back to Maame so she can add a few more points on this. Yeah.
Sure. Do's and don'ts, but maybe I'll start with like another thing that really you can do is like whose voices are at the center is always a question that we ask a lot. It's like, who actually are you positioned, like what's the position, right? You're constantly asking this question in a myriad of ways, both in terms of power dynamics in the world and like also in the ways in which, in relation to our positioning with grantee partners, it's whose voice is at the center of whatever you're doing, and are you making sure that it's their voice and their perspective that's focused on? How much of yourself is involved in what you're saying? And how much of your community is represented in what you're posting or in the work you're doing? Even down to things like who we choose to repost. It's like, well, if we're going to repost feminist artists, that's an important choice. And you make it because, again, it's amplifying your community. It's amplifying our community. And then also there's like simple do's and don'ts, like no thing. Oh, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, the line was breaking up a little bit. Go on, Maame.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry, my internet is not the best today, but yes. So trying not to misrepresent folks, and always make sure that when you do things, you're doing them. When you post things, you are representing people in their fullness and with all the dignity that they deserve. Is super important. So we're mindful, again, also to be this idea of like safe comms, and so to be mindful of the ways that activists also can get negative attention, and you don't want to put folks at risk, but you also want to talk about their work, and so that's also a tightrope that you often have to walk. So you often have people who are doing that work at risk. Yeah, I think I can stop there for now. Oh, wait, one more thing. So this idea or this tone of that an organization can do that's been something that's been really beautiful to see whilst I've been at FRIDA is this. So we've recently launched a tech strategy as well as like an RM ethics policy, and all of them have this real tone of, hey, we're still learning, we're still doing this thing, we're still building this thing. And so in that sharing, it's also this positionality of like, yeah, we're young, but we know what we're doing, but we also are open to the fact that it's the first time that something's being done, right? So we're open and we're learning. And what that does is it almost allows, and to also trust they're coming at it from, okay, so you're learning. Oh, yes.
Sorry, Maame. We just, you're saying a lot of very interesting stuff. Do you mind maybe just switching off your camera just for the stability of the connection, and then just repeating what you just said about, I think, the new strategy which you're making. Go ahead.
Sure, okay. Sorry, I'm not sure what's going on with my internet, but so we recently launched a tech strategy as well as like an RM ethics policy. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And all of them had this sharing this work. It's from a place of, yes, we're knowledgeable, yes, we're building this thing, yes, these, you know, we're young and we're new and we're open, but also this, it creates an almost like a sense of equality, or a sense that you can be questioned, but it doesn't take away from the fact that you're still knowledgeable. And so what that does is it positions you both in a space where you can continue to grow and continue to learn from everyone, but also in a space where you can say, and we're building our expertise, we're building our knowledge. And so it allows everybody to kind of enter the conversation. I think that's what I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just gonna spend 2 minutes.
Oh, I can't tell
maybe.
if it's
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so just the last leg of the discussion, which are what are some of the current questions that we're grappling with, and like what are we up to now? Again, something that Maame is best positioned to answer, as she is part of the comms team right now, which is active. But I'm just gonna say, you know, from a point of exhaustion that this year has been for every single one of us, regardless of where we are and what we do. This is a particularly challenging and difficult year. So some of the questions that FRIDA is grappling with, I'm sure each one of us is grappling with, regardless of, you know, the kind of comps we do. And it's as simple as, you know, the world is literally on fire. And we want to put it out, but we're also trying to not burn out, not get affected by it ourselves. And we know that's not really possible. So what's the best way to keep our mental health and well-being in place while also offering a hand of support and a solidarity hug to people who may be feeling similar or even worse, right? Over to you, Maame, to kind of wrap up this conversation and answer this last leg of this discussion.
Yeah, so this question is definitely interesting because there's definitely a lot of that thing of exhaustion. I don't think I've ever been so tired out by a year in my entire life. And I've only been here for 29 of them now. But it's very much a thing of constantly being in this position where you are trying to put out the best communications that you can. You're trying to represent all this work that folks are doing, and you're absorbing all of that information all of the time. like as a Black woman, FRIDA did a Solidarity Week, and a lot of it is social media work, kind of publishing things that things are writing, publishing things that people are doing, focusing on what grantee partners are doing. And it's a beautiful moment, but it's also really exhausting, because what ends up happening, and you carry the weight of it with you. And so I think that's one thing that often gets overlooked in communications work, is that like everyone is carrying this work with them all of the time. You know, so like how do we do responsible comms? How do we show, talk, and have conversations about all of these fires? Like, and how do we not overdo it? How do you not burn out in the process? How do we allow folks to even understand all the different narratives that we're trying to talk with, like, okay, and this is what it is. And this is all the context. At a certain point, it really weighs on you. So a lot of the grappling is like trying to balance all the different narratives, trying to make sure that the team is taken care of, trying to make sure that we don't, you know, absorb too much, or we don't take on too much, so that when we step away from the work and then we go onto our regular timelines where things are still on fire, we still have some bandwidth to deal with them. We still have some bandwidth to do life. So yeah, I think everyone's kind of struggling with all of this stuff, and with 2020's continuous barrage of like, just, you know, when you think it can't get worse, it just takes a left. So I think everyone's kind of doing that right now. But yeah, thank you. I think that's it. But thank you so much for listening and for being here, and for allowing me to be a part of this. This was dope.
This was super dope. Thank you. Thanks, Deepa. I'm just going to hold on to that phrase, the poet in me, Maame. This beautiful, exhausting moment is what we're in. And so we are just really, really grateful for you all to share these reflections with us and give a glimpse of what FRIDA is doing and grappling with at this moment. We knew the hour would go fast. What I would like to do is kind of do the wrap up for those who have to run away at the hour, or the half hour, depending on where you are. And then we'll hold some space after that for anyone who wants to do some discussion, because we really didn't have a lot of space as we did all of the establishment of what is this thing at the beginning, which is also important. But yeah, please hang on if you want to share some reflections. And these were our questions for us to think about together, which is, what reflections or insights do you have, as you heard from Maame and Deepa? And then what challenges or changes are you facing in your work? I'd love to hear that from each of you. So after the wrap up, feel free to hang on and we'll have a discussion about that beyond the hour, but we also value your time and greatly understand that if you need to go. For those who are new, we are recording this, and this recording will be found in the Healing Solidarity Collective. And I just want to say big gratitude again to Marianne and the Healing Solidarity Collective for hosting us, and Deepa and Maame for their contribution today, and what an amazing, wonderful kickoff for this series. Our next meeting will be the November 11th at this same time. So we are going for the second Wednesday of every month, folks. And we're plan this out to July just to see what might emerge. Please feel free to sign up for that at this link. And we're really going to dive into this, what does it mean to decolonize development communications, or communications within organizations that are invested in social change. We're going to try to focus on that next month, especially as we get to fundraising season. I think we're going to have to talk a little bit about fundraising at the end of the year. So you're all welcome to that. Joanne and I also are really open to any suggestions you might have for how we not just manage the space, but upcoming guests, themes or questions you'd want to grapple with together. You're more than welcome to reach out to any one of us anytime. And I just want to also offer that there are ways to support the Healing Solidarity Collective, which right now is funded by one tiny grant and a heck of a lot of volunteer hours. And so I would be remiss not to offer the link for how you can support us to keep these spaces going. And that is in the chat for you right now. Yeah, and I think that's all of the business part of the wrap up. So let's turn back to the questions at hand. And thank you all for being here. So, and we were going to do small groups, but this is a small enough group. I think maybe it's just worthwhile to refocus on those questions. What reflections do you all have, insights, things that were brought up for you from the conversation? Dreams, aspirations for the space. Open Q&A time. So we're heading off. Here's our question.
I can start again.
Sonia.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Really appreciated it. And also the beautiful visuals. Those are really nice. I made a note about maybe doing that for my board meeting. I guess, Deepa, I really heard what you were saying, that fine line between we're catalysts for this movement, but we're not on the ground. And especially since I work for a foundation that's really just like funding people who are doing the work. How do I figure out what, I mean, I am fundraising for this, I guess, for our connection for them. I mean, so I see us as a pass through in some ways, but thinking about how many Americans have this sort of aversion to like paying for extra levels of management, like quote unquote, like, you know, so how do we say that we're facilitating, but that we're important in the connection and that this is what someone is connected to, but that, I don't know, it just gets so tied up so quickly. So I appreciated that, reflecting on that fine line, and then also, you know, who else can I bring in to be part of my team so that it's not just my voice, because I am a one-person staff team. So how do I bring in other voices? So thank you.
Should we take more questions or should I answer that?
Let's answer. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. I can begin, and Maame, feel free to chip in and jump in. So maybe starting with the second part of your question about, yeah, like who to involve when you are the only one, and understandably so. I think one question that I myself have struggled with, and I still continue to struggle with, is how to make comms more participatory. You know, just because of the fact that, you know, I come from FRIDA, which is an organization rooted in participatory politics. You know, the grant making model that we follow is participatory. A lot of the decisions we make involve people who are directly or indirectly affected by it, right? So, you know, when I was the only one in the team, was it even a team? Okay, who can I include in this campaign or in this ideation who will be equally excited about executing this, right? So, you know, often, more often than not, what happens is, you know, when we reach out to somebody, I don't know, from the programs team or the finance team, one of the first questions that they would bring would, but how does this affect me? What do I get in it? As simple as that. What do I get out of it? So I try and think and brainstorm of campaigns where I'm not deciding the narrative entirely, but it is something that touches upon some things that the finance team may be impacted by, that the programs team may be impacted by, that the MEL team may be impacted by. So there is something for them in it. They have a say because they have some experience of doing that thing, so they have something to offer. And when that person gets the space to offer something, they are likely to contribute, they're likely to bring in their fresh ideas and feel included in the process, right? It's hard, very easy to say, let's do this, let's do that. It's hard. But we're going to learn, right? There have been moments where we've come up with ideas and we were the only one excited about it. And we were like, are we doing this wrong? Because nobody else is as pumped up about it. So maybe we need to tone it down a little bit or tone it up a little bit. So it really helps in that sense also, because when somebody outside of the comms team offers you something, it's so valuable, because sometimes we get caught up in our own space of, yeah, people understand this and this hashtag is just gonna go viral. Well, maybe not. And we need that reality check. So that's the second part of it. The first part about, the funder activist space, it's a tough space to be in. Some could also say that it's an oxymoron. If you are an activist, you can't be a funder. If you're a funder, you can't be an activist. Maybe, and I don't want to discredit that line of thought, because with funding and with being a funder, there comes a power play, and one needs to be acknowledging that. What I do personally is kind of like use my own activist space and my activism to boost myself. It helps me write proposals. It helps me design campaigns, because I try and think like somebody who's on the ground. So say, for instance, it's a campaign to raise awareness on abortion rights in a particular context. So, as somebody who does believe in abortion rights, I try and think of, okay, how can I make a campaign that will affect me as somebody who has been involved in providing safe abortion access to people in my community, right? So it really helps. Then that funder activist identity becomes an enabler. Then that becomes an identity to embrace, because then you're like, hey, I'm an outsider, I'm an insider. It's a great place to be in. I get the best of both worlds. But again, the flip side is, well, I don't want to be, most importantly, I think the most common dilemma I face is around, how do I stop being patronizing? How do I stop myself from being this, oh, we're going to give them dollars and they're going to do wonders? No, it doesn't happen like that. If I was on the ground and if I got $5,000 to execute a campaign, well, maybe it sounds like a lot of money, but I don't know what to do with $5,000 because I've never received any funding in my entire life. So this whole idea of money will solve problems has to be unpacked a lot more. So these kind of questions will help you and I write that proposal in a much more nuanced way, because we're asking for support that goes beyond money. We're asking for recognition. We're asking for acknowledgement. We're asking for value. We're doing great work, so value us. I don't want to spiral out a little bit, but yeah, Maame, do you want to offer some of your pearls of wisdom too? Because I know you have some.
I'm just trying to think of anything I could say that would be better than what you just said. Like, I don't know if I have anything to add other than that positioning is, it's so funny that I do not even think of them as opposite sometimes, because I think my work is very much, when I'm at FRIDA, it's very much like communications in a very particular way. When I'm out of the FRIDA space, it's very much, and you're never really out of it too. So it's like, but it's very much like, I'm just gonna go organize these spaces for folks. I'm just gonna go convene these meetings. I'm just gonna go, organize these protests, and we never get money. It's so funny, but I never think of it. But like, I cannot think of one time anyone has been like, we will give you any funding. Again, like when folks start trying to formalize, what I found really powerful about working in organizations like FRIDA and AWDF, where I was before, is you now have the knowledge to pass on to be like, okay, so you want to go for a grant, like, or you want to write a proposal, like you can pass on all of the things that you learn kind of doing this other work to other organizations about how they should start thinking about formalizing that process. And so it's a good way, I think, to pass on that knowledge. Is like, well, all this stuff that you maybe don't. For me, it's almost like a dissociative identity thing, where between certain hours, I'm a very particular human, then within other hours, I'm doing something else. And it's like, well, it's not that separate, and it's connected, and I'll draw on one to help folks also, build up their own organizational growth and build up their own like groupings and get their own funding. I think that's a powerful way is to consider the information and the insight and the knowledge that you have is also part of like is building blocks for another group or building blocks for another thing that you're doing. But yeah, that's all.
Any other questions? Thanks for hanging on for a little bit longer. And hi, Maria. We see you. Well, you have the bios of our presenters today. We're really, again, grateful for their contributions and just the beautiful work that FRIDA Fund is doing in the world. It is beautiful. And there is something about the giving full attention to our aesthetic. There's something really beautiful about the plurality of your aesthetic. And I really just want to honor the work that you both do all day, let alone you're thinking about it and in the background. Yeah, this has been really gorgeous hour. We'll have to think about extending it next time. It's all an experiment, everyone. And thank you for being part of the experiment. Joan, is there anything you want to say to wrap us up?
I'm just very grateful for everybody who's hung on and everyone who was here before. And I look forward to doing this again. Yeah, and we welcome your feedback, so send us feedback, how we can fine tune this. This is our space. This is for us to create. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks all. We'll hope to see you next month.
Yeah, see you on the 11th.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.